Welcome back. And I would like to welcome our guests. This is Kate Muir and this is Lucia Rinaldi. And so, as I explained at the beginning, we are going to discuss the film and the themes, because there's a lot, as you now know, to unpack. And then we'll open it up to have a conversation with you. So I wanted to just put a couple of responses. Well, you heard Kim at the beginning, so hopefully that was a useful contextualization from Kim. The things that I wanted to talk about, actually, and this is very much playing into some of your specialities, Lucia, was just how stunningly big a job the arts and cinema has done to kind of mythologize and promote the mafia. I mean, it's kind of staggering when you watch this film how much of a service cinema has done, particularly to mythologize. Wow. I mean, let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. And, you know, just the mafia bosses just watching The Godfather and saying, there we are, that's us. I mean, it's quite amazing, isn't it? But Letizia just, I mean, what an incredible woman. And the thing that I was really struck by, which it reminded me, I'm actually reading Susan Sontag's on photography at the moment by chance, and it's a seminal work of she's sadly deceased, incredible public intellectual who did a lot of work around the gaze and particularly around photography and the power of bearing witness, and Letizia is such an incredible witness, and what it's really striking is the sort of damage that it does, you know, bearing witness. And, you know, you like living with, I mean, for years, she doesn't really say how long, but the idea that what she bears witness to then could also kill her. And living with that threat is really quite staggering. And I was just so struck by how, the ugly brutality of what she witnesses, and then that she has to, but she still puts her life on the line for that. And now I can't find my quote. Here we are. Susan Sontag on photography, which is a legendary text about for the power of photographs. So Susan Sontag says, photographs cannot create a moral position, but they can reinforce one and help a nascent one. And another one, which is the painter constructs, the photographer discloses. So I just wanted to put those out there. Kate, your response, please.
Well, my first thought coming here was I was looking on my phone and it said 26 million people have watched The Irishman on Netflix. And I expect many of you have watched it. And I certainly haven't quite finished it yet, but I'm 2 hours in. And I was thinking about that view and the white men there and the absolute amorality of that film. And actually nobody talks about it. And all these mafia films, which, you know, you can talk about the Italian ones as well. But I suddenly was thinking about it and just watching it. And then I watched this other film at home on the same screen and saw the agony and the bravery and the honesty and the children, and just that the women are completely excluded from the Scorsese film and many of his other mafia-type films. And I just thought, I'd like to see Coppola, I'd like to see Scorsese, I'd like to see every single one of those films remade from the point of view of the wives and children and maybe little brothers or whatever, but from the point of view of not the men of honor, as she puts it, but from the... And I think this moment of the female gaze, films like this, and bringing, you know, this woman back into kind of currency now. You know, she's a real discovery. It's a bit like Agnes Varda becoming huge suddenly, and it is wonderful to see her work. And it, to me, it compares to like Ouija in New York, who took all the pictures of the crime scenes in the 1930s and 40s in New York. And so those were my initial thoughts about it. Thank God for the female gaze. We've got so much work to do now on this.
Exactly. Neve, the producer, as Kim says at the beginning, it was Neve who went on a holiday to Palermo and found the gallery and saw the pictures, and then it spent a year persuading Letizia to make this film. And she says that apparently she really has only become a kind of national heroine legend aged 80, she had to wait that long. Not dissimilar to Agnes Varda. Like women have to kind of wait if they live that long into their 80s. And she's 84 now, so and she says in the film that she kind of spent quite a long time somewhat as a persona non grata, actually, that it was too hard to do what she did. So, Lucia, I'd love to hear your perspective now.
In a sense, I understand why she became famous now, because there's a sort of shift in the representation of the mafia in films, generally speaking. On television, it happened since the beginning of the 90s with Falcone's death, of course. That was such a pivotal moment in real life that became, of course, represented in film and photography and so on. And I agree what Kate said. It's always about representing powerful white men. And I would like to quote the late Sicilian crime writer Andrea Camilleri, that he didn't like to represent mafia because he said, I'm going to contribute to the glamorization of the phenomenon instead of actually fighting against it, because it's so entrenched and shouldn't be represented as something almost positive in a way of cars and power and money and I don't know business. Already the mafia representation is start to be different.
Yep.
And also I watched. I'm not sure I like or I don't like the film by Piff, which is this comical take on growing up in Palermo during the mafia attacks of the 80s and the 90s. Again, it shifts a bit the focus not on power and business, but on the victims, but not the victims in a sense of the people murdered, but the people around those who've been murdered, and of course the atmosphere in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Letizia, it's part of this new approach of representing the mafia in a different way.
Mm-hmm. One of the lines that she says in the film, which I find very striking, is that the photographs I didn't take are the ones that hurt me the most. I mean, as a creative person, Kate, you're a writer as well, like that, it feels also like that's something. It's not just around creativity, of course, it's also the things that she censored herself from taking and bearing witness, that maybe it was too much sometimes. And so, and she I miss them, I feel disrespectful somehow, is the quote. I found that really powerful, and that she says, I've never been at peace, and she says that in a present tense. It's always been a struggle.
Yeah. I mean, she has all the struggles of, a war correspondent.
Yeah. And
we've documented it so many times with men. And I was thinking of the title of one of the books written about Vietnam, which is Has Anyone Here Been Raped and Speaks English, by Edward Bear. And obviously that is what you do as a journalist. You walk into that situation and you take the terrible picture, or you ask the terrible question, and do you bear witness or do you exploit? And she is so self-aware of the beauty of her pictures and hating people, because that one of the woman kind of standing back, being held up by a bunch of men, and obviously her son or husband or something has died. And you're aware of how beautiful and almost religious that picture looks. And I think her self-awareness and the way she talks about it in the film, in a very matter-of-fact way as well, I think she's so deeply admirable. I really admire her for that. And I also admire her for the way she is behaving like men do, and maybe people should, which is, I am doing my job well, and if, my family are going to have a tough time because I'm doing my job well, that's the way it has to be, and that's the sort of person I am, and I'm trying to do my best, but I can only do my best. And that's such a relief, I think, for so many women who are creative or want to change something or want to campaign, to think that's okay. I think that was a great sort of message for me.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm quite impressed by how many lives she has, and
how many men she had.
Also, but the lives is interesting because in being a Sicilian woman that was very much born in a very patriarchal society, and then at 40s she decided that she didn't like it any longer and that she wanted to change, and then she started to be a photographer and then a journalist and then a politician and then an activist, going to rallies and so on. So she really is a force of nature, and maybe this sounds silly, but I was also impressed by the surname that in Italian means battle. So it's very I don't know, something that gives even a more edge to her work as an activist and as a feminist, because in a sense she is doing something that is completely against the society where she comes from and the establishment where she comes from.
At great personal risk, of course.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay, let's open it up. So, responses to the film or the themes or questions, we can go trad if you would like. And there's a mic, so if you wait for put your hand up. Yep.
It's an amazing film, amazing woman, amazing story. I'm sort of interested in the context. Was there anyone else doing what she was doing? Men or women? Was she the only one who was there with the camera when these things happened?
Her boyfriend Franco did the same thing for 20 years, and his photos are similar.
And his subject matter is that it was because I didn't quite. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I think there were a few photographers who were doing the same in other papers as well.
But so the response to her as a female photographer was different to the response to the men's work, sort of in.
Yeah, I believe so, but I think that she was the one that, also said she's just stopped being a photographer because she just felt like it wasn't enough. And in a way, I think there was the moral dilemma of, is this actually helping the mafia? So hence becoming a politician and an activist. No one else did that, as far as I know anyway. Yes, at the back. Lucia, did you have anything to add to that? No.
Remarkable film. Why do you think they didn't kill her?
Whoa.
It's a speculation here. I'm not sure why. Maybe at some point is also they found it was a publicity for them.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, it's she received a lot of threats, so maybe lucky. I don't know. It's or maybe because she's a woman, and she's not as important and Falcone and Borsellino. So she was. She has no power in the traditional sense. So probably that's the reason.
Yeah. There's a lot of activity there. I think you need a mic.
We're talking about about the lack of power. The government was involved in Falcone and Borsellino.
Are you from Sicily?
No, I'm from Sardinia.
Okay.
But I've been to Sicily, and I went through the Capaci where Falcone was actually killed, and there is a very eerie atmosphere there. But I know, I think that Borsellino, it was known that tons of explosive had arrived in Italy, in Palermo, for him. So there's some sort of complicity with the government. He was obviously not liked. And Falcone was the same.
The same, yeah.
I think there's a great responsibility. And so,
well, hence the uprising after their deaths, that obviously the corruption went everywhere and right to the top. Yeah.
But I was thinking also of Saviano, Roberto Saviano.
Yes.
I mean, he's under constant protection, and I think Letizia Battaglia is still under protection. She's got a kind of bodyguard.
Yeah. If I can go back a bit, already in the 60s and the 70s, and talk about Leonardo Sciascia, very famous Sicilian writer that wrote about mafia extensively as a journalist, but also as a detective fiction writer. And he would have been appalled by the death of Falcone Borsellino for sure, but he always lamented the fact that, according to him, Mafia was not only an organization, but was a mentality that was spreading in politics, and that was protecting your own dirty work, and he was a pessimist. He was sure that in Sicily justice could not triumph because of that mentality. And I have to say that then it would have been pleased to see how many people reacted to the death of Falcone and Borsellino, and how even from Letizia's pictures, the landscape changes from a few policemen and men around the body to thousands and thousands of people in the square, and especially not only men, like in Letizia's pictures of the murders, but women and children and everybody else protesting against Mafia and try to find a way of fighting it. So it's quite interesting, the history of anti-Mafia movement.
Yeah, hi. My surname, by the way, is Battaglino, so it's small battle. Okay. So I really loved to find out so much about her. Thinking, she must be a relative. Can I just say, comment about that picture of the woman, sort of, going back in horror? It is the Pietà, isn't it? It's the grief of the women over the death. It reminded me so much of all the, Catholic iconography in all the churches, obviously in Sicily and elsewhere. But the thing about sort of, I think it was the woman in the middle. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Kate.
Sorry?
Kate.
Kate commented about seeing or telling the story of the Mafia from the mothers and the daughters. I know a lot of people made that comment about The Irishman. We only hear 10 words from the daughter. I actually think in that case her silence is important. But also, I don't actually think, having come from a community not far removed from where this is, in New York, I don't actually think the story of the women and the daughters, many of whom I knew personally growing up, is actually that important. It's the trauma of the whole society. It's how, that the women and the children had, their fathers went away. They went on holiday. They went on this. They had their sort of lives that were slightly different than ours. But the whole neighborhood, the whole society, the whole area is actually traumatized.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, we're just going to rush to fit in a couple more. I think we have about 2 minutes.
Oh, I just had a question about, there seemed to be more focus on the Mafia sort of recently, particularly the Southern Italian Mafia, like Camorra on television, or the Maradona documentary by Steve Capadia. I wonder if that's a response to the Mafia losing some of their power, or whether it was an effort to reduce the power that had gotten so big.
It's a very good question. I would actually start with the audience tastes, probably. Detective fiction, crime fiction, mafia fiction. It seems to be quite the hype for this type of programs, generally speaking. But certainly it's a different way of representing the mafia, for sure. In the 80s, in the 90s, most film and television dramas like La Piovra, which is translated like the octopus, were about fighting the mafia, the secret society in the mafia, and the state losing against the mafia. And now there's a new way of representing it. But I think the widespread, the majority of these films are because the public actually likes this type of representation, and there's more freedom to talk about it that before was not there.
Yeah, and certainly the mob is not going away in terms of as a rich subject for cinema, as you pointed out in The Irishman. I mean, the mob are not the same as the mafia, are they?
Yeah, but they are liked as well in terms of watching television and enjoy violence. I don't know if I can say that, but represented, of course.
Yep. Okay, one more.
I just wanted to talk about one of the characters in the one of the Mafia characters, who was Ligio, I think his name was.
Yep.
And Letizia had sort of come across
Ligio.
him. Yes. But I think credit to Kim and the way the film's put together. actually portrays him, you know, or you see him as being such a kind of vainglorious guy. I mean, it reminds me of Trump a bit, actually. You know, and yet he wasn't even the linchpin, it looks like, in the end.
Yeah, he's the one who hid for 14 years. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that was also what's amazing is that was the first trial that was filmed like 24/7. So there are incredible. And then that's the one where they're all behind. They're all like it's incredible that they were all arranged like that and that you can see them. And I mean, the footage is apparently amazing. It took them a long time to dig into the archive and get all of that. All of those outtakes, because most of it was cut for news, but the whole thing was filmed.
It was amazing.
Amazing
There wasn't more public reaction, I guess, you know, given what happened afterwards.
It was only pieces of that were shown on television,
right.
From the news. It was a secret location, and it was a bunker underground that has been built, of course, because of the bombing.
Wow. Yes.
I was just going to think, one of the other things that struck me and we haven't really talked about is the use of, you know, old sort of romantic film shots of Italian
classic
sort of
cinema.
Classics. And that the contrast of that kind of imagined perfect life and also Letizia going out really bravely, and particularly I thought she did that exhibition in the street in Corleone and just standing out there with her photographs on the wall, and then the square clearing.
Yes.
And the contrast between kind of the imaginary expected female life and the absolute out there bravery of that public moment. And I think that whole film is about those the contrast of the expected and the utterly unexpected.
Yeah, beautiful point to end on. Lucia, anything last to add before we wrap?
I do like very much the use of close-ups in this film, because they really show her emotion, although she's very matter of fact.
Yes.
You can see how she reacted to the events in her life and in Palermo when she was taking the pictures. So I like her.
Apparently, she's at that gallery, a few times a week, and actually you can meet her. She's there all the time. So if anyone's going to Palermo, go to the gallery. You'll probably meet her. That will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Thank you to Lucia and to Kate. Thank you for coming. And please, if you wouldn't mind filling in the surveys, and if you're interested, we do loads of events. So we screen films like Fossama, and we've got Portrait of a Lady on Fire coming up, which is an amazing film by Celine Sciamma, who did Girlhood. Toni Morrison documentary in March. There's loads of stuff coming up. So please sign up. Thank you.